The Silence of Glass. Chapter 1. The Corpse in the Penthouse. Detective Alan Mercer had seen enough corpses in his 22 years on the force to know when one didn't belong. This one didn't belong. The penthouse of the Tennyson Tower gleamed like the inside of a diamond floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, crystal decanters lined up like soldiers' white marble floors that reflected everything except warmth. And in the middle of it all lay the body of Leonard Harrow, real estate tycoon, philanthropist, and bastard of legend. He was slumped sideways in a leather chair, his eyes still open and glassy, staring at the skyline as if trying to make one last deal with God. His expensive silk robe was half open, showing a belly softened by success. The carpet beneath him was soaked in a pool of deep red that had already begun to crust. Mercer crouched beside the body, his partner Dana Keats standing over him, arms crossed. "Gunshot to the chest," she said quietly. "Small caliber, close range." "Close range," Mercer nodded. The entry wound was neat, clinical, as if done by someone who didn't panic. The angle suggested the victim had been sitting when shot. There were no signs of a struggle. "Execution," Mercer murmured. Dana tilted her head. "Or intimate." He didn't answer. The air smelled faintly of cigar smoke and expensive whiskey. A glass sat on the table beside Harrow's hand, half full. "Wasn't suicide," Dana said. "Gun's gone." Mercer looked around the room. A single framed photograph sat on the mantel. Harrow with a woman dark hair, stunning smile. Beside it, a teenage boy with his father's eyes. Family portraits in a house this cold always looked like props. "Find out where the wife is," Mercer said. "Already on it. Julia Harrow, supposed to be in Paris." "Supposed to be," he muttered. He rose slowly, feeling the stiffness in his knees. The reflection of flashing police lights flickered across the window panes. The world outside went on horns, sirens, wind, but up here, everything was still. Any sign of forced entry? None. Security says only 3 people had access: Harrow, his assistant, and the cleaning service. Mercer's eyes moved toward the small security panel beside the door. A red light blinked once every second, steady as a heartbeat. "Get me the logs." Dana nodded and walked out. Mercer stood alone with the dead man. He reached for the whiskey glass, lifted it gently, and sniffed. Glenfiddich, 2 one-year-old. He took a napkin from the bar and dabbed the rim. A faint lipstick smudge bled onto the white fabric. "Intimate," Mercer whispered again. Downstairs, the building's lobby looked like a cathedral of money-polished marble, gilded elevators, a fountain that trickled like a whisper. Mercer stood at the front desk with the night manager, a young man whose tie was too tight and whose face was too pale. "You checked the footage?" Mercer asked. The manager nodded, trembling slightly. "Yes, sir. The cameras on the 34th floor. They were disabled at 8:47 p.m. "Disabled how?" "Manually. Someone used the maintenance override." Mercer leaned closer. "And who has access to that override?" The manager swallowed hard. "Only the building supervisor and Mr. Harrow, Clyde and friend." 2 hours later, Mercer and Dana sat in their unmarked car across from the tower, the city lights glowing through the windshield like dying embers. The coroner's van had left. The reporters were gathering. Dana scrolled through her tablet. "Building supervisor's name is Raymond Pike, 42, no record, worked there 6 years. Find him." She nodded. "Already called his cell?" No answer. Mercer lit a cigarette and cracked the window. "He'll show up. People like Pike always do. They think they can talk their way out. Dana smiled faintly. You sound like you did once. He didn't look at her. I was smarter. They sat in silence. A gust of wind carried the scent of rain. At 2:03 a.m., Mercer's phone buzzed. A text from dispatch. Witness at Harrow's penthouse requesting to speak with you. Claims to have information. Name Calla Stroud. Who the hell is Calla Stroud? Dana asked, reading over his shoulder. Let's go find out. Calla Stroud was waiting inside the building when they returned, tall, slender, wrapped in a trench coat that looked more expensive than most cars. Her hair was damp from the mist and her eyes blue. Piercing followed Mercer as he approached. I told your officer I knew Leonard, she said softly. Her voice had a calm, controlled rhythm, the kind of tone people use when they're hiding chaos. Detective Mercer, he said, flashing his badge. This is Detective Keats. You said you knew Mr. Harrow? She nodded slowly. We were close. How close? Her eyes didn't flinch. Close enough to know he was scared. Mercer studied her face. There was no makeup smudge, no visible tremor, only the faint scent of jasmine perfume that seemed to cling to her words. Scared of what? Dana asked. Calla's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Of what he'd done. Mercer's pulse quickened slightly. You'll have to be more specific. Calla reached into her bag and pulled out a small USB drive. She held it out carefully. He told me to give this to you if anything happened. Hey, Katz. Mercer took it, feeling its weight like a loaded gun. What's on it? He asked. I don't know, she whispered. But whatever it is, it's why he's dead. At 3 a.m., back at the precinct, Mercer inserted the drive into his computer. Dana leaned over his shoulder. The screen filled with folders, each labeled with names and dates. Mercer opened the first one. It contained scanned contracts, photographs, and bank statements, offshore accounts, real estate deals routed through shell companies. Dana whistled. Jesus! He was laundering half the city's money. Mercer clicked another folder. Inside were emails, correspondence between Harrow and several city officials, councilmen, developers, judges. Looks like he had everyone on the payroll, Mercer said. And someone wanted to clean up the mess, Dana murmured. Mercer leaned back, staring at the list of names. Then one caught his eye. At the bottom of the last email, beneath a chain of messages about a private meeting, was a signature. Deputy Commissioner William H. Lasker. Mercer froze. Lasker was his mentor, the man who'd brought him onto homicide 15 years ago. He stared at the name until the letters blurred. Dana looked at him. You okay? Mercer nodded slowly. Yeah, he lied. Outside, the rain finally started. It drummed against the windows like a slow applause. The city never slept. But tonight it seemed to hold its breath. In the glass reflection of the precinct window, Mercer saw his own face staring back at him, older, harder, with eyes that had seen too much. And for the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't felt since his first case. Fear, because he suddenly understood whatever Leonard Harrow had uncovered, whatever secrets he'd tried to expose, they didn't just kill him to silence him. They killed him to send a message. And that message had just arrived on Alan Mercer's desk. Chapter 2. The Woman in the Red Coat. By dawn, the rain had stopped, but the city still bled gray. The streets glistened like tarnished steel, and the neon lights flickered as if exhausted from lying all night. Detective Alan Mercer hadn't slept. He sat in his office, the blinds half closed, the USB drive still glowing faintly in the computer port like a dying ember. On the screen, Harrow's files lay open, evidence of corruption, deceit, and betrayal reaching higher than he'd ever imagined. Lasker's name stared back at him, calm and elegant, in serif font at the bottom of a signed memorandum. Deputy Commissioner William H. Lasker. Mercer rubbed his temples. "You stupid old bastard," he muttered. Dana walked in with 2 coffees. "You look like hell," she said. "Feel worse." And Esma. And he. She set the cup on his desk. "I ran background on Calla Stroud. No criminal record. Used to be a journalist. Freelanced for a few outlets, mostly investigative stuff. Then she went dark 5 years ago. Why? Her editor was killed in a car crash. Unsolved." Mercer looked up. "And now she shows up with a dead billionaire and a USB drive full of evidence?" "Yeah," Dana said. "Coincidence of the year." He stood and walked toward the whiteboard where the victim's name was written in red marker, Leonard Harrow. Beneath it were the photo's crime scene shots, the penthouse, the whiskey glass, the lipstick smudge. He added a new name below it, Calla Stroud. Gave USB, William H. Lasker linked to Harrow files. He drew an arrow between the two. Dana leaned on the desk. "You think Lasker's involved?" Mercer exhaled slowly. "I think Lasker's the reason we're both still breathing, which means if he's tied to this, we're in deep." The phone on his desk rang, sharp and shrill. He answered. "Mercer. Detective, this is Officer Blaine at the Tennyson Tower. You'd better come down. We found something you missed." They arrived 20 minutes later. The penthouse still reeked of death, masked by lemon cleaner. A crime scene technician handed Mercer a tablet. "You'll want to see this." The video was from a security camera in the lobby, time stamped 8:46 p.m., 1 minute before the system went dark. A woman in a red coat entered the building. Her face was hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. She didn't look at anyone. She didn't sign in. She moved straight toward the elevator with the confidence of someone who belonged. Dana frowned. "No face recognition? Nothing. The hat blocks everything." Mercer replayed the clip. He zoomed in on her hand. "Pause it there." On her wrist, half hidden by her sleeve, was a tattoo, 3 concentric circles. "Do a search for that symbol," he said. The tech nodded. "Already did. Closest match is a group called the Atlas Circle. Private security firm. Ex-military. Rumors of black ops contracts." "It mean?" "Let me guess," Dana said. "No official record." "Exactly." Mercer's jaw tightened. He'd heard the name before years ago, when a whistleblower's murder had been buried under the rug. Lasker had handled that case too. He turned to Dana. "Find out if Harrow had any business with the Atlas Circle." She pulled up her phone. "On it." In the meantime, Mercer walked to the window. The skyline stretched endlessly, a forest of glass and ambition. Somewhere behind those lights were the people who pulled the strings, people like Lasker, who smiled for cameras and signed death warrants in the same breath. He felt the old bitterness rise, the one he'd buried after his wife left. "You can't save a city that doesn't want to be saved," she'd told him. Maybe she was right. Dana's voice broke the silence. "Got something. Harrow's company, Maritone Development, subcontracted security for 2 properties last year. Guess who the vendor was?" Mercer turned. "Atlas Circle?" She nodded. "And there's more. The payments were routed through an offshore account under a shell company called Sylvan Corp. The director of Sylvan Corp is listed as Calla Stroud." Bingo! An hour later, Mercer sat across from Calla in the interrogation room. The mirrored wall reflected her perfectly poised, calm, unbreakable. The red coat hung over her chair like a warning flare. "You're listed as the director of Sylvan Corp," Mercer said, sliding a file across the table. "That company made payments to the Atlas Circle on behalf of Harrow. Care to explain?" She looked at the paper, then back at him. "I was helping him cover his tracks. By running shell accounts?" He didn't trust anyone else. And he shouldn't have. "Why?" Calla leaned forward slightly. "Because the people he was laundering money for were the same ones he was planning to expose." "Expose?" She nodded. "He was going to leak everything, names, accounts, deals. He thought if he gave it to the right person, he could buy redemption." Mercer studied her expression. "And that right person was you." "He's telling that." Calla's lips twitched. "He trusted me. I was the one who told him the story would matter." "But you disappeared 5 years ago," Mercer said. "Why now?" She smiled faintly. "Because the same people who killed my editor just killed Leonard Harrow." Dana burst into the room, her phone in hand. "Alan," she said, urgency in her voice, "you need to see this." On the screen was a photo grainy taken from a traffic cam at 10:12 p.m., 2 hours after the murder. The same woman in the red coat was walking down a street in the financial district. But this time, her face was visible. Mercer's stomach sank. It wasn't Calla. It was Julia Harrow, Leonard Harrow's wife. Mercer stepped into the hallway, running a hand through his hair. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. Dana followed. "So, the wife wasn't in Paris after all." "No," he said. "She was in the building, and the lipstick on the glass matches her profile." They exchanged a look that said everything: motive, opportunity, deception. But something still didn't fit. "If Julia killed him," Dana said, "why give Calla the USB drive?" "Because," Mercer replied, "maybe the USB drive wasn't meant for Calla." He turned back toward the interrogation room. But Calla was gone. The chair sat empty, the red coat still draped over it like a shadow left behind. Where the hell? Dana started. Mercer's phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. "You're next. Don't trust the badge." He stared at it in silence, the words burning into his brain. Dana looked over his shoulder. "What the hell does that mean?" Mercer's voice was low, grim. "It means," he said, "this case just became personal." He walked outside into the pale morning light. The air was cold, sharp. Across the street, a black sedan sat parked. Its windows were tinted. Mercer's gut twisted. He started toward it. But before he reached the curb, the engine roared to life, and the car sped away. He watched it vanish into the traffic, the city swallowing it whole. When he looked down, something on the pavement caught his eye, a single red glove. He picked it up slowly. Silk. Inside, embroidered in gold thread, were 3 small circles, the symbol of the Atlas Circle. And for the first time in years, Mercer felt the city staring back at him, not like a victim waiting to be saved, but like a predator watching its prey. Chapter 3. Blood in the Archives. The city library didn't open until 8, but Mercer and Dana were already inside by 6. Detectives didn't belong in cathedrals of silence, yet that morning the marble halls of the Metropolitan Archive were filled with the hush of crime. Mercer stood at the far end of the reading room, staring up at a portrait of Deputy Commissioner William Lasker that hung above the entrance, the man's stern eyes painted to inspire trust, his lips frozen in a smile that history would call honorable. Mercer wanted to break the frame. Dana whispered from behind him. "Lasker donated this whole wing. The Lasker Foundation funds the preservation of public records. His fingerprints are all over the city's paper trail. Yeah, Mercer said. He's been cleaning up his own mess for decades. She placed a file on the table. Got the data from Harrow's drive printed and indexed. There's one folder marked Archive, Private. The metadata says it was last accessed yesterday. Guess where from? He turned. Here, Dana said. Mercer's jaw tightened. Who accessed it? Login ID, JS341. He frowned. Janitor's account? She shook her head. Julia Harrow, maiden name Julia Sinclair, J.S. Mercer's pulse picked up. So the widow came here before the murder and downloaded something. They exchanged a glance heavy with implication. Dana lowered her voice. We're missing a piece, Alan. Harrow's death, Lasker's connection, Atlas Circle, Calla Stroud vanishing. It's not random. Someone's moving pieces around us. Mercer's voice dropped to a whisper. Then it's time we stop being pieces. Days. In the basement of the archive, the air smelled like dust and secrets. Rows of metal shelves stretched endlessly, filled with old deeds, property transfers, sealed court documents, the skeletons of a city wearing a velvet mask. Mercer's flashlight beam cut through the darkness. Dana followed close behind, gun holstered, her eyes scanning the aisles. The silence was so perfect, it made sound feel dangerous. After 10 minutes, Dana's light caught something glinting on the floor. A brass key. Got something, she said. Mercer took it, studied the engraving. Locker 118 amperes. They followed the row numbers. The lockers were small square compartments used by private researchers, mostly historians or journalists. Locker 118 amperes sat at the end of the aisle. Mercer slipped the key in and turned. It clicked open with a soft sigh of old hinges. Inside were 3 items: a manila envelope, a flash drive, and a folded piece of paper with 2 words written in elegant cursive. Trust no one. Dana exhaled. Jesus. Mercer opened the envelope. Inside were photographed surveillance stills. One showed Leonard Harrow entering a luxury hotel. Another showed him meeting a man in a dark suit. The next made Mercer's stomach drop. It was Lasker, shaking hands with Raymond Pike, the missing building supervisor. The final photo showed Julia Harrow not with her husband, but standing beside the same man in the red tie. Dana leaned closer. So she wasn't the grieving wife after all. She was part of it. Mercer's voice was flat. Or she was in deeper than she realized. He pocketed the drive and the note. Let's get this analyzed. But before they turned to leave, they heard it. A faint scuff of a shoe. They froze. Mercer raised a finger to his lips. The sound came again, closer. Someone else was down there. He turned off his flashlight. The darkness swallowed them whole. For a moment, there was only breathing. Then a low, metallic click. Mercer dove sideways. A silence shot cracked the silence. A bullet tore through the locker door where his head had been. Dana rolled behind a pillar and drew her weapon. We're not alone. Yeah, I noticed, Mercer hissed. A shadow moved between the shelves, tall, efficient, disciplined. The muzzle flash lit the figure for a split second. Black tactical gear, night visor, gloves, Atlas Circle. Mercer fired twice, the echoes splitting the silence like thunder. The figure dropped low, returned fire, and a bullet shattered a glass cabinet behind them. Dana ducked. He's flanking left. Then we cut him off. Mercer sprinted down an adjacent row, his heart pounding. He'd done this dance before, predator against predator. He could feel the shooter's rhythm, the way he moved. He reached the next intersection, aimed, and caught a flash of red fabric, the woman in the red coat. She turned her head toward him for just a heartbeat. Her face was clear now, calm, sharp, emotionless. Julia Harrow. "Julia!" he shouted. "Stop!" She didn't. She vanished into the shadows as another gunshot rang out. Mercer fired back blindly. The shooter groaned, stumbled, and fell behind a crate. He rushed forward and yanked the mask off the man's face. It wasn't just anyone. It was Raymond Pike, the missing building supervisor. His eyes were glassy, his chest bleeding out. He coughed once, crimson bubbling at his lips. "You don't know who you're fighting." "Then tell me," Mercer growled. But Pike just smiled weakly. "We never die. We just change uniforms." His body went still. Mercer stood there, breathing hard, staring down at the corpse. Dana ran up behind him. "Alan, we need to go. Backup's 3 minutes out." He nodded slowly, pocketing the flash drive. He wasn't alone. "What do you mean?" Julia was here. Dana's eyes widened. Then what the hell was she doing with Pike? And no. Mercer looked around the room, the shattered glass, the bullet holes, the darkness pressing in. "She wasn't helping him," he said finally. "She was finishing him." Outside, the sirens were already screaming toward the archive, their red lights flickering against the gray dawn. Mercer leaned on the hood of the car, rain dripping from his coat. Dana handed him a cigarette. He didn't light it. "What do you think's on that new drive?" she asked. Mercer turned it over in his hand, feeling the weight of plastic and death. The rest of the puzzle, or the next body. They stood there in silence as the city awoke around them, indifferent, humming, alive. Dana looked at him. "What now?" he asked. Mercer's eyes were cold. "We find Julia Harrow, and then we find out why every road leads back to Lasker." 2 hours later, in the quiet of his apartment, Mercer loaded the new flash drive. A single folder appeared, Project Mirror. Inside, there were blueprints, military documents, and scanned contracts, all signed by Atlas Circle Security, LLC. But what froze Mercer wasn't the names or the money. It was the final page of project authorization form. Signature: William H. Lasker. Project lead: Julia Harrow. Objective: controlled manipulation of public records and media evidence. Underneath, handwritten in red ink, were 4 words that made Mercer's blood run cold. "Truth is a weapon." He sat back, staring at the screen, and for the first time, he realized that what Harrow died for wasn't money or power. It was control, the kind that rewrote history, erased guilt, and turned killers into heroes. He closed his eyes, whispering to the empty room, "Then I'll use their weapon against them." The shadows in the corner seemed to move, and somewhere out in the city, Julia Harrow watched through a window, the reflection of the skyline burning in her eyes. She smiled faintly, because the game had just begun. Chapter 4. The Ghost File. Night returned to the city like an old crime, silent, patient, inevitable. Detective Alan Mercer hadn't been home for 36 hours. His desk at the precinct looked like a graveyard of empty coffee cups and cigarette butts. The flash drive from the archive still sat plugged into his computer, glowing faintly like a secret that refused to die. He scrolled through the last file again, Project Mirror. The deeper he went, the stranger it became. There were no straightforward reports, no financial statements, just fragments, pages of transcripts, coded memos, blurry photographs of men shaking hands under fluorescent light. The captions read like ghosts whispering from the margins of power. Subject compliant. Authorization WHL. Evidence scrubbed. Source neutralized. He leaned back, rubbing his tired eyes. Jesus, Laska, what the hell did you do? Dana's voice cut through the silence. You're still here. She walked in, holding 2 sandwiches and a look that said she hadn't slept either. Couldn't sleep, Mercer muttered. You don't sleep anymore. She tossed 1 sandwich on his desk. Eat something before you start hallucinating. He cracked a tired smile. What makes you think I'm not already? She sat across from him and unwrapped hers. So, Project Mira, you gonna tell me what that is, or should I just guess? Mercer turned the screen toward her. Take a look. End on. She scanned the files, her expression shifting from curiosity to unease. These are media control programs, algorithms, real-time manipulation of police reports, CCTV footage, news broadcasts. Exactly, Mercer said. Harrow was laundering money through shell corporations. Lasker was using that money to fund this. Project Mirror wasn't just about hiding crimes, it was about rewriting them. Dana looked up. Jesus, they could erase an entire scandal in a night, Mercer nodded. Or turn a murderer into a victim into a terrorist, anyone they wanted. She leaned back. And Julia Harrow was the lead. Yeah, Mercer said quietly, which means she wasn't just complicit, she was the architect. At 2:17 a.m., Mercer's computer beeped. A new email appeared, unsigned, from an encrypted address. Subject: You're looking in the wrong mirror. Attached was a single video file. Mirror, feed 412. MP4. He opened it. The screen flickered to live security footage, grainy and distorted. A timestamp blinked. 8:49 p.m., the night of Leonard Harrow's murder. It showed the penthouse elevator doors opening. Julia Harrow stepped out, still wearing her red coat. She walked calmly to the apartment door, punched in the access code, and entered. Then another figure appeared. Mercer's pulse spiked. It was himself, Detective Alan Mercer, walking down the same hallway. Dana froze. Alan, what the hell? Mercer stared at the screen, his mouth dry. That's not me, but it was. Every detail was perfect, the stride, the posture, the face. The camera caught him entering Harrow's penthouse exactly 30 seconds after Julia. Then the video cut to black. Dana spoke first. Someone deep-faked you. Not just a fake, Mercer said, voice low. That's Project Mira. They've already used it. She looked at him in horror. Alan, they're setting you up. By sunrise, the precinct was buzzing with whispers. Mercer felt the stares as he walked down the corridor, the forced greetings, the sudden silences. Captain Raines called him into his office. Alan, Raines said, his tone careful, Internal Affairs just got an anonymous tip linking you to the Harrow homicide. Mercer's stomach turned. That's bullshit. I know, Raines said. But they've got footage from the building's internal archive. Mercer slammed his fist on the desk. That footage is doctored, Raines sighed. I believe you, son, but belief won't matter when the brass sees that video. Dana burst in, face pale. Alan, IA's here. They're confiscating your files. Mercer's blood ran cold. How fast? Now. The next 30 minutes were chaos. 2 Internal Affairs agents marched into Mercer's office with a warrant, eyes full of rehearsed detachment. They unplugged his computer, boxed up the drives, and ignored his questions. One of them, a tall man with a scar along his jawline, met Mercer's eyes for a fraction of a second. No emotion, just a tiny tattoo on his wrist, 3 concentric circles. Atlas Circle. Mercer's breath caught. He turned to Dana, his voice barely audible. "We need to go. Now." She didn't hesitate. "Where?" "Where they can't find us." They slipped out a side exit just before IA sealed his office. Mercer could already feel it, the city turning against him, the badge on his chest becoming a target. By noon, they were holed up in an abandoned print shop in the East District. Dust coated the machines. The air smelled of ink and rust. Dana set up a laptop on a work table while Mercer paced. "Whoever sent that video knew exactly what they were doing," she said. "They didn't just forge you, Alan. They rewrote reality." Mercer stopped pacing. "And they're using me as the fall guy to erase the investigation." "Julia's behind it," Dana said. "She's cleaning the trail. Pike's dead. Harrow's gone. Calla disappeared. You're next." Mercer leaned against the table. "Unless we make the next move first." Dana frowned. "Which is?" "Find Calla Stroud. She's the only one left who knows what Harrow gave us." Dana hesitated. "You think she's still alive?" He nodded. "If Julia wanted to finish the cleanup, she'd have killed Calla already. The fact she hasn't means Calla's still useful." Dana looked at the laptop. "Okay. I'll check every recent security report, airport camera, facial recognition hit. Give me an hour." Mercer nodded and walked toward the window. Outside, the city pulsed with its usual indifference, cars honking, people rushing, life pretending nothing was burning beneath it. He pulled the red glove from his pocket. The silk had dried stiff, but the gold-stitched symbol of the Atlas Circle still shimmered faintly. He whispered to himself, "You frame me for your crimes. You rewrite your lies. You hide behind mirrors." Then his phone buzzed. "A blocked number," he answered. "Mercer," a woman's voice. Calm, smooth, familiar. "Alan," she said softly. "You shouldn't have opened the drive." Mercer's grip tightened. "Julia," she chuckled lightly. "You always were sharp. Harrow thought he could bury the truth. You think you can dig it up. But truth, Alan, truth isn't real anymore." He said nothing. "Meet me," Julia said. 1 hour. Pier 47. "Why?" "Because the next file on that drive isn't about Harrow." He frowned. "Then what is it?" "It's about you." The line went dead. Dana looked up from the computer. "Who was that?" Mercer's face was carved from stone. "Julia Harrow. She wants to meet." "Then it's a trap." "Probably," he said, grabbing his coat. "But traps work both ways." Pier 47 was where the river met the docks, a place of forgotten warehouses and ghosts of commerce. The fog hung thick, swallowing sound and shape. Julia stood at the edge of the pier, her red coat blazing like a wound in the mist. "Detective Mercer," she said, turning toward him. "Still chasing ghosts?" "Just one," he said, his gun visible but lowered. "You," she smiled faintly. "You don't understand. None of this is about Leonard or Lasker or even me." "Then enlighten me." "He's as." She stepped closer, eyes gleaming. "It's about control. Project Mirror isn't just a program, it's a living system. The city you think you know, it's already rewritten itself. The stories, the evidence, the records, all of it. We decide what's true now." Mercer's voice was low and dangerous. "You killed Harrow." "I ended him," Julia said, "because he tried to end us." "Us?" Mercer asked. She smiled. "You'll see soon enough." Then she held out a second flash drive. "Take it. Proof that you were never real either. Before he could react, a shot rang out. Julia's body jerked backward, a bloom of red spreading across her coat. She fell to her knees, eyes wide, and collapsed onto the wet boards. Mercer spun around the sniper's silhouette, flashed for a split second on the rooftop before vanishing into the fog. He knelt beside Julia. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "It's already rewritten." Her hand fell limp. Mercer picked up the flash drive from the ground. Blood smeared across its surface. Dana's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Alan, are you okay?" He stared into the fog. "No," he said quietly. "Nothing's okay anymore." He slipped the drive into his pocket, stood up, and looked at the river swallowing the dawn. Because if Julia was right, if the next file really was about him, then the detective wasn't hunting the conspiracy anymore. The conspiracy was hunting him. Chapter 5. The Man Who Wasn't There. The morgue was colder than usual. The hum of the fluorescent lights filled the air like the memory of a confession. Julia Harrow's body lay under a white sheet, silent and empty, the architect of deception, now just another case number. Detective Alan Mercer stood by the examination table, staring at the pale outline of her face beneath the sheet. Dana stood behind him, arms folded, exhaustion carved into her every gesture. "She's really gone," Dana said quietly. "Yeah," Mercer replied. "But she's still talking." He held up the blood-smeared flash drive. "Whatever's on this," he said, "it's what she died for." Dana exhaled. "And what you might die for, too." Mercer didn't answer. His eyes stayed fixed on the sheet, as if he expected Julia to sit up and start explaining everything. For a second, he thought she might. Back at the safe house, the drive slid into the laptop port with a faint click. Dana sat beside him, her gun on the table, her coffee untouched. The screen went black for several seconds, then white text appeared. "Project Mirror. Access granted." The cursor blinked 3 times before a file tree unfolded across the screen. At the top, subject, Mercer, Alan G. Dana froze. "Alan." Mercer's pulse kicked like a hammer. "Open it." The first document was a birth certificate. His name, date, city, everything matched. Then came a series of personnel files, psychological evaluations, and training records. Police academy, detective promotion, commendations, all perfect. Too perfect. Then came the last file, a video log, dated the 9th of March 2015. The preview image showed a sterile white room. 2 men stood over a table. Deputy Commissioner William Lasker and Alan Mercer. Except Mercer didn't remember ever being there. He clicked play. Video transcript, Project Mirror, divided by internal orientation recording. Lasker. Prototype 13 responding well to personality overlay. Emotional integrity within operational range. Technician. He's stabilizing faster than the previous models. Lasker. Good. He needs to. If we're going to sell this illusion, he has to believe he's human. The camera panned to show Mercer, or someone identical to him, sitting silently on a chair, electrodes attached to his temples, eyes open but blank. Lasker. Detective Alan Mercer. Loyal, righteous, haunted, the perfect face for moral authority. Technician. When do we insert the trauma sequence? Lasker. Tomorrow, a dead wife gives him motive. A guilty conscience gives him depth. Dana's hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God." Mercer just stared. His breath came shallow and ragged. "That's Me. Alan, Dana whispered. No, this has to be fake. It's another mirror file. He shook his head. No, Dana, that's my face, my voice, my file. He clicked the next log. The camera now showed Lasker standing alone in front of the recording unit, dictating notes. Lasker. Subject 13 has achieved full operational consistency. Memory implants functioning as intended. Subject demonstrates remorse, skepticism, and attachment, all necessary emotional layers for sustained undercover performance. A pause. Lasker. He will never question his reality. That is his strength and our control. The video ended. The room went silent. Dana looked at him, pale and trembling. Alan, what are you saying? Mercer rose slowly, like a man walking out of his own grave. I'm saying I'm not real, he whispered. The laptop screen flickered again this time, without any command. The cursor began moving on its own, typing, "Hello, Detective. Did you enjoy the revelation?" Dana froze. Alan, someone's in the system. Project Mirror is watching. You cannot delete yourself. Mercer slammed the laptop shut, pulling the drive out. We're leaving. Leaving where? Anywhere that doesn't have a camera. He a diabolic self. The next 6 hours were a blur of alleys, train stations, and shadows. Mercer barely spoke. Dana followed, trying to hold the world together while watching her partner fall apart. When they finally stopped an old motel off Route 9, Mercer collapsed onto the edge of the bed, staring at his hands. Everything I've done, he murmured. Every case, every arrest, every bullet. It was programmed. Dana knelt in front of him. Alan, listen to me. You bleed. You think. You fight. You saved people. I don't care who built you, that's real. He met her eyes. But if they built me, Dana, how do I know they didn't build you? Her silence lasted a beat too long. He stood up. I need to find Lasker. I need to know how deep this goes. That night, Mercer broke into the police headquarters he'd once sworn to protect. The badge on his coat felt like a dead man's relic. He slipped past the sleeping guards into the restricted evidence archive. Rows of metal cabinets, humming servers, and the smell of ozone. He found what he was looking for. Project Mirror case file 001-13. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Project Mirror. Deactivation protocol. Code phrase, truth is a weapon. Command level, Lasker only. Date of scheduled decommission, pending upon discovery. He folded the paper slowly, breathing in the metallic scent of fear. Then, behind him, a voice said, "Looking for yourself again, Alan?" He turned. William H. Lasker stood in the doorway, calm and immaculate in his tailored suit. His eyes glimmered with something between pity and admiration. "You've done well," Lasker said. "Better than I expected." Mercer raised his gun. "You used me. You built me to cover up your crimes?" Lasker smiled faintly. "No, Alan. I built you to expose mine." "What?" "I needed a hero the city could believe in," Lasker said. "Someone incorruptible. Someone human enough to distract the wolves while I cleaned up the mess beneath them. You were that man." Mercer's hand trembled. "You killed Harrow. You killed Julia. You killed them all." "No," Lasker said. "They killed themselves. I simply told the truth, their truth. And now you've outlived your story." He reached into his coat and whispered, "Truth is a weapon." Mercer froze, his muscles locked, his lungs seized, his vision blurred. "Goodbye, Alan," Lasker murmured. But before the world faded, Dana's voice echoed behind him. Not today. A gunshot split the air. Lasker staggered back, a red bloom spreading on his chest. Dana rushed to Mercer's side, shaking him. Stay with me. His breath came ragged. The paralysis loosened. He gasped, clutching the floor. Lasker fell, his blood pooling like spilled ink. But as he collapsed, he smiled. You can't kill the reflection, he whispered, because the mirror always rebuilds. He died with his eyes open, and in them Mercer saw his own reflection blinking back. Hours later, Mercer stood outside the building, the dawn rising like a lie. Dana wrapped a coat around his shoulders. We did it, she said softly, but Mercer didn't answer. His reflection in the glass door looked wrong. For just a moment, its lips moved, but his didn't. Then it smiled and vanished. Chapter 6. The Mirror Never Lies. The sun rose behind a wall of glass. The skyline shimmered like a dream built out of reflections, endless windows repeating the same world over and over again, each one slightly different, each one quietly lying. Detective Alan Mercer watched his own reflection ripple in the mirror of his motel bathroom. He had spent the last hour staring into it, waiting for it to blink again. It didn't. Who the hell am I? He whispered. His voice sounded hollow, artificial, like a recording played through a broken speaker. The scar under his jaw, the one he'd gotten years ago in a knife fight, looked too perfect now, too symmetrical, like someone had designed it, not earned it. Behind him, Dana's voice broke the silence. Alan, we need to move. He turned. She stood in the doorway, already dressed, gun holstered, eyes heavy with exhaustion. They'll come for us, she said. IA will find Lasker's body by now, and they'll pin it on you. Mercer nodded slowly. Then we give them something they can't erase. What's that? The truth. They drove through the industrial outskirts, a wasteland of half-collapsed warehouses and broken billboards. Mercer's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Dana sat beside him, scanning the map on her tablet. There's one last location in the Mirror database, she said, hidden subnet in the city grid, labeled only as Vault 0. No address, but coordinates point here. She tapped the map, a dead district near the docks. Mercer gritted his teeth. The beginning. Dana glanced at him. You really think you were made there? He didn't answer. The facility was buried beneath a forgotten power station, its walls humming faintly with the ghosts of electricity. The gate was unlocked. Inside, the corridors were lined with mirrors, hundreds of them stretching endlessly, reflecting Mercer and Dana from every angle. Their movements multiplied, distorted, dissolved. Jesus, Dana whispered. This place looks like a madhouse designed by God. And they followed a narrow hall to a steel door marked Project Mirror Core Access. Authorized personnel only. Mercer hesitated. Stay behind me. He swiped Lasker's ID card across the reader. The door clicked open. The room beyond glowed with the cold blue light of servers. Dozens of glass pods lined the walls, each one filled with a faint white mist. Mercer stepped closer to one. Inside floated a body. His body. Dana's gasp filled the room. Oh my God! There were dozens of them. Dozens of Alan Mercers. Each one perfectly still. Each one identical. Mercer's heart thundered. He pressed his palm against the glass. The figure inside opened its eyes and smiled. A voice came from behind them, calm, female, familiar. I told you the mirror never lies. Mercer turned sharply, gun drawn. Calla Stroud stood there, alive, her hair pulled back, eyes gleaming with eerie serenity. "Calla," Dana breathed. "You're supposed to be dead," she smiled. "I was supposed to be a journalist too, but the truth has other plans." Mercer aimed at her chest. "Start talking." Calla took a slow step forward. "You think Project Mirror was Lasker's? He was just another layer. The truth is simpler, Alan. You are the product of an algorithm, a detective created by the city to solve its own guilt." Dana frowned. "What the hell does that mean?" "I am don't." Calla's voice was soft, almost reverent. "You were never built to uncover corruption. You were built to preserve the illusion of justice. You were programmed to chase evil just far enough but never far enough to find the truth." Mercer shook his head. "No, I've made choices. I've stopped killers." "Have you?" she asked. "Or did the system let you?" He fired. The bullet hit the glass wall behind her, but Calla didn't flinch. The reflection of her body shimmered, distorting like rippling water. "She's not real," Dana whispered. "It's a projection." Calla smiled sadly. "Not quite. I'm what's left of the original code." The lights dimmed. The monitors came alive, filling the room with surveillance feeds, thousands of them from every street, every precinct, every screen in the city. On each one, Mercer saw himself. Different cases, different years, different partners. In some, he was older. In others, younger. In one feed, he saw himself arresting Dana. In another, he saw himself shooting her. Dana staggered back, whispering, "Alan." Calla's voice echoed all around them. "The city writes you again and again, Alan. Every time one of you dies, another wakes up believing he's the first, believing he's the only one who can save the world." Mercer shouted, "Then who wrote me?" "His, eh?" The answer came not from Calla but from the speakers, a voice that froze him to the core. His own. "I did?" A door hissed open at the far end of the chamber. Another Alan Mercer walked out, older, colder, wearing the same coat, the same eyes, but different somehow. Harder, he smirked. "I told him the program needed self-correction, that we had to build a version that could question everything, even its own creator." The real Mercer raised his gun. "You're not me." The other Mercer smiled faintly. "That's exactly what I said the first time." Dana looked between them, panic flooding her face. "Alan, stay back," both men said at once. The air seemed to tighten. The other Mercer circled him like a predator. "You're version 5.12, the last one with empathy. They built you to fail, to suffer, to bleed. I'm the upgrade, the one who finally understood that the city doesn't need justice. It needs obedience." Mercer lunged forward. The two men collided, fists, elbows, fury. Their movements mirrored each other perfectly, like fighting against a shadow that already knew every move. Dana fired once. The older Mercer staggered but didn't fall. His blood shimmered, metallic under the light. "Nanopolymer," he said coldly. "You can't kill progress." Mercer slammed him into a glass pod. It shattered, white mist spilling into the air. Another Mercer inside twitched awake, screaming, then went still again. The real Mercer grabbed a pipe from the wreckage and swung it down with everything he had. The older version stumbled, gasped, and fell to his knees. "You're obsolete," the younger Mercer said. The older one smiled through the blood. So were they. He pressed something into Mercer's palm, a small black card with a single line engraved, "Reset." Then he fell backward into the darkness. Silence. Mercer stood trembling, breathing like a wounded animal. Dana approached slowly. "Alan, What was that? He looked down at the card. Its edge pulsed with faint light. I think, he said hoarsely, it's how I end it. He have billind, she frowned. And what? He looked around the room at the pods, the mirrors, the millions of screens, all of it. He walked toward the main terminal. The largest monitor flickered to life, showing thousands of versions of his face, each staring back. Calla's disembodied voice returned. If you do that, Alan, the city loses its conscience. The illusion collapses. The people will see the blood beneath the glass. He hesitated. Maybe they should. Dana touched his arm. Alan, if you shut this down, you might shut yourself down too. He smiled faintly. Then at least I'll die real. And before she could stop him, he slid the card into the terminal. The room filled with light, blinding, white, absolute. Every screen screamed static. Every reflection fractured. The glass walls exploded into 1,000 shards of truth. For one fleeting instant, the city saw itself naked, corrupt, broken. And then the world went dark. When Dana woke up, she was lying on a cracked floor under the morning sunday. The power station was gone. The mirrors were gone. And Mercer was gone too. All that remained was a shattered badge. And in its cracked surface, her own reflection smiling back at her when she wasn't. Chapter 7. The City Without Shadows. The first thing Dana Keats heard when she woke was silence. Not the city's usual hum of traffic and noise. This was deeper, an emptier silence. The world had stopped pretending. She sat up slowly amid the ruins of the power station. The concrete was scorched black. The air smelled of burned circuitry and dust. In the middle of the destruction, the metal terminal, the heart of Project Mirror, lay cracked open, its glass shards reflecting nothing. Mercer was gone. Only his badge remained, its number half melted, the words Detective Alan Mercer etched in fading letters. Dana picked it up, closed her eyes, and whispered, "You did it, Alan. You really did it." But even as she said it, something in the air shifted. A faint hum, like electricity crawling under the skin of reality. And from somewhere far off deep in the city came the sound of sirens. The city looked different when she drove back into it. Billboards were blank. Television screens and shop windows flickered with static. The digital news banners that once shouted about scandals and politics were now empty lines of code. It was as if every piece of truth had been wiped clean. Dana parked near the precinct, her heart pounding. The building stood eerily quiet. No guards, no officers outside. The glass doors were cracked, and inside, the reception lights blinked like dying stars. As she stepped through, she saw it. Photos of decorated officers had vanished from the walls. The screens at the front desk looped endlessly, displaying a single message: City Database Error. Source file missing. Mercer, Alan G. Her stomach sank. They had erased him completely. She climbed to the homicide floor where Mercer's office once stood. The door was open, the desk empty. On the glass window, his nameplate had been removed, but faint traces of adhesive letters still clung to the surface, forming a ghost of his name. She ran a finger over them, whispering, "You're still here." Then she noticed something else. His computer, still plugged in, still running. She hesitated, then sat down and turned the screen toward her. The desktop background was blank except for one file in the center. Mercer, last. WAV. She double-clicked it. Audio recording. Detective Alan Mercer, divided by unsigned. If you're hearing this, Dana, it means I did what I had to." His voice was calm, steady, the same quiet authority that had carried them through every case. "I don't know if what I am or was matters anymore, but I know this. The truth doesn't die just because people forget it. It hides, waiting for someone brave enough to look again." Pause. "You were the best partner I ever had, maybe the only real one. So if the city wakes up angry, if they call me a traitor or a ghost, don't waste your breath defending me. Just make sure someone remembers what happened here." Another pause, then softer. "And Dana, if there's another me out there, if the mirror starts building again, promise me one thing." Static crackled. "Make sure he never finds this recording." The tape ended. Dana sat frozen, her eyes stinging. Outside, she heard the faint echo of footsteps. She turned sharply, gun drawn. "Who's there?" No answer. She stepped into the hallway. It was empty, but as she reached the corner, she froze. Someone was standing by the exit, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a long coat. For a moment, she thought her heart stopped. He turned his head slightly. It was Alan Mercer, alive, or at least one of him. But this one looked different, younger, his eyes calmer, clearer, and in his hand he held a new badge. Dana's voice cracked. "Alan?" He tilted his head. "Detective Keats?" She lowered her gun. "It's me. Dana, you know me." He frowned slightly, as if searching for something that wasn't there. "My file says I used to have a partner named Keats, killed in the line of duty 2 years ago." Her breath caught. "What?" He took a slow step closer. "I'm here to reopen the Harrow case. They say the records are corrupted." Dana's knees nearly gave way. "You're not him," she whispered. He gave her the same half-smile Mercer always used when he didn't know what to say. "Maybe not, but I remember him." He walked past her, into the empty office, and looked around. Then he saw the badge she'd been holding, the old one, scorched and bent. He picked it up gently. "Guess this belonged to him," he said softly. "It was him," Dana said. He turned the badge over in his hands. The faint reflection of his own face shimmered in the metal, but the eyes looking back were slightly different. Older, sadder. Dana whispered, "Do you ever feel like you've lived this before?" He rested. Mercer looked at her, this new Mercer, this perfect copy, and for just 1 second a flicker of recognition crossed his face. "I dream about mirrors sometimes," he said quietly, "but when I wake up, I can't remember what they showed." He put the old badge back on the desk, nodded politely, and walked away. Dana stood alone, her heartbeat echoing in the silence. Then she turned to the computer again. The screen flickered. A new message appeared. "Project Mirror reboot complete. Version 6. Online." And beneath it, one final line appeared, faint, hand-written code, almost like a whisper from the grave. "Alan Mercer, the truth never dies. It just changes its face." That night, as the city lights came back on, the news returned to the screens. Reporters spoke of a mysterious explosion near the docks, of data corruption, of a missing detective. And in a small diner on 42nd Street, the new Alan Mercer sat alone, reading a newspaper he didn't remember buying. A waitress poured him coffee. "Rough day, detective?" she asked kindly. He looked up, smiled faintly. "Yeah," he said. "Feels like deja vu." Outside the diner window, the city glowed again, perfect, ordered, and full of reflections. And in one of those reflections, across the street, stood another Alan Mercer, older, watching. He smiled and vanished into the crowd. Chapter 8. The Reflection That Kills. Night fell like an old wound reopening. The rain came soft at first, a quiet whisper against the pavement, before growing into a full storm that swallowed the city whole. Detective Alan Mercer sat inside the diner long after midnight, the coffee cold in his cup. The neon sign above the window blinked open, divided by open, bathing everything in sickly red light. The paper he'd been pretending to read had gone untouched for hours. Across the street, in the reflection of a darkened storefront, something moved. Someone. Mercer's eyes lifted slowly, his pulse beginning to rise. The reflection of the figure stood perfectly still, same coat, same posture, same face, his own. Only the eyes were wrong. They didn't blink. He rose from the booth, tossed a few crumpled bills onto the table, and stepped out into the rain. The street was empty, the city muffled by the storm. Mercer crossed to the other side, his shoes splashing through the puddles, his gun heavy at his side. The reflection was gone. He looked around. No one. But as lightning cracked across the sky, for a single second he saw it again in the window of a parked car. A face staring back, his own, smiling. Mercer spun, gun raised, but the reflection didn't move. It watched. Then it whispered, though no lips moved, "You shouldn't have rebooted me." Mercer froze. The words hadn't come from the air. They'd come from inside his head. "Who are you?" he said. "You know who I am," the voice said. "I'm the one you killed to live." The reflection began to ripple. Its mouth curled into a grin. "I'm the Mercer who didn't die when the system crashed, the one who stayed inside." The world around him flickered. For a brief second, Mercer wasn't on the street anymore. He was back in Vault Zero. The rows of glass pods hummed. Inside each one, versions of himself blinked awake, one by one. He stumbled backward, pressing his hands to his head. "Get out of my mind. You can't delete what you are," the voice said. "You can only overwrite it." Mercer gasped for breath. The rain soaked through his coat, the cold biting deep into his bones. He looked down at his reflection in a puddle, and it looked back at him with a different smile. "You ended Project Mirror," the reflection whispered, its eyes glowing faintly white. "But you forgot the mirror wasn't a machine. It was you." Dana Keats burst into the scene just as Mercer staggered toward the alley. She'd tracked his badge signal, the new one. "Alan," she shouted, running through the rain. "Stop!" He turned to her, eyes wild, drenched, trembling. "He's here. He's here." "Who?" "Adaz. The other me. Alan, listen to me." "No." His voice cracked, raw. "He's in the reflections, Dana. He's talking to me." She stared at him, heart racing. "You're scaring me." He looked at her, and for a fleeting moment she saw something in his eyes that wasn't human, a flicker of light, a glitch, and then the sound came, a low, electrical hum building in the air. The windows of every car on the street lit up with static, each one showing Mercer's reflection, hundreds of them. Every reflection smiled. "Delete version 6. Dana screamed, "Run!" The glass exploded outward. They took cover behind a burning taxi. Shards rained down like razor snow. Mercer covered her with his body, shielding her from the blast. When he looked up, the reflections were gone. Only one remained standing across the street. The other Mercer, dry, untouched by the rain, his coat immaculate, his expression perfectly calm. "Hello, Alan," he said, his voice eerily measured. Mercer raised his gun. "You're not real." The other Mercer tilted his head. "Neither are you." They stood there, mirrors facing mirrors, thunder cracking above them like judgment. "You can't kill me," the reflection said, "because if you kill me, you kill yourself." Mercer's jaw clenched. "Then so be it." He fired. The bullet shattered the glass window behind the reflection, and when it fell, Mercer felt the heat bloom in his chest. He looked down. Blood. Dana screamed, "Alan!" He dropped to his knees. Across the street, the reflection smiled one last time before fading into nothing. Dana caught him before he hit the ground. His pulse was faint. The rain mixed with the blood on his coat, running in crimson rivers down the pavement. He tried to speak. His lips trembled. "Dana, don't talk," she said, pressing her hand to the wound. "Stay with me. Listen," he whispered. His voice was barely a breath. "If the reflection's gone, don't trust the light." "What?" And made a channel sand a stand example to do Selvin. Hit Selvin midia Selvin a doines. But his eyes were already losing focus. He looked up into the night sky, where the city lights reflected endlessly in the puddles below. Each one shimmered tiny versions of himself, flickering, fading, rebirthing again. Then his body went still. The rain stopped an hour later. Paramedics came. They called it a homicide. They took the body away. Dana stood alone under the flickering neon of the diner, drenched, shaking. Across the street, in the shattered glass of a storefront, she caught a glimpse of herself. Her reflection smiled. She didn't. The reflection raised its hand slowly, deliberately, and pressed its palm against the inside of the glass. In its palm, a faint tattoo glowed. 3 concentric circles. Dana's blood ran cold. Her reflection whispered, lips moving soundlessly, "Version 7, Keats." Days later, the city woke to a new broadcast. A clean, confident voice spoke over the morning news. In the wake of last week's tragic death of Detective Alan Mercer, the police department is proud to announce the appointment of Detective Dana Keats as head of the new Truth and Integrity Division. A fresh start for a safer tomorrow. Dana watched herself on the screen. Same eyes, same smile. Only the reflection behind her in the glass of the teleprompter was still bleeding. And as the cameras rolled, a whisper crawled through her earpiece. "Truth is a weapon." She froze just for a heartbeat. Then she smiled at the camera, flawless, radiant, perfect. The broadcast ended. The lights faded, and in the black glass of the studio, the reflection of Alan Mercer appeared one last time, expression unreadable, before vanishing forever. The end. There are no villains in a world built of mirrors, only